Hello, and welcome to another video podcast. My name is Judy Lacquadera, and I blog at patchworktimes.com. And this is another and hopefully the last video done with the iPad. I've checked the tracking, and the camera should be here tomorrow. Like I said, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but we'll figure it out. But I wanted to talk to you about swatch gauges because that was something that there were comments on that yesterday and questions. But first, I was going to tell you that my granddaughter is 6, and so every time I go to see her, I've picked up little things while I was away, and I bring them to her. And when I was there the last time, her mom told me that Addie told her other grandma, she said, Granny brings me all kind of things, but she never wraps them. And I said I didn't know I was supposed to wrap them. I wrap birthday presents, I wrap Christmas presents, but I didn't know I was supposed to just wrap everyday junk that I bring. But yes, I am supposed to do that. So today I'll be wrapping. These are some things. I don't even know where Vince got these, but he got them for $1. It's some nail polish. I have no idea what this is, but it's some troll walkie-talkies. I don't know if she's into trolls or not. There's all kind of little lip gloss. This is one that that tastes like Lucky Charms. There's some in here that taste like honey. There's one that tastes like cereal and milk, which doesn't sound like it would be very fun to have on your lips all day. So I have to wrap packages today for her. And then the other thing, last night I started a sweater for Addie. It's going to be for next winter. And I'm using the Strange Brew pattern. And I've got the book somewhere right here. And this is Strange Brew by Tin Can Knits. And if you have any interest at all in doing these kind of yoke sweaters with color work, this is an amazing book. They are so good anyway. But this has, I think they said there are over 1,500 possibilities with this book. And there are child sizes like from babies through men's on every pattern. And there are charts where you can create your own color work design. And the patterns, they tell you how to do them so that everything comes out to be divisible by whatever number that most of the color work charts seem to be. And so I started this one. I had planned to start doing the sugar plum cardie for Addie. So when I got the yarn out, the yarn that I had is this, and this. And these are the same colors that were used in the sugar plum cardie pattern, the pattern online. But when I started looking at the different sweaters that people had made, and sometimes it's hard to know because some of the people may have been new knitters, I don't know, but some of them just didn't look too good. Some of them did, but some of them didn't. And overwhelmingly I saw the neckband sticking out too far, and I saw the sleeves being too big, which would be easy to fix if I had Addie to try it on, but I don't. And then as I was reading the comments, there were people who said the sleeves were too big, and there were people who said the sleeves were too small. So I decided I would just do a different sweater. So I'm going to do one out of the Strange Brew book, which then led to me not knowing exactly what yarn I was going to choose and if I had enough. So the pattern I'm using uses 4 colors. And it starts usually with a white at the top, but I figured the top is the place that there are going to be the most spills, or drips or whatever. So I started with this pink. And then I'm going to use this one, and this one for my color work. And then I'm going to go back, and I don't have enough yarn just to finish the sweater using this, which was what I had thought I might do. And so I was thinking I would just do like a fade for the bottom, but I thought I would order, this is a discontinued yarn, or for a real discontinued yarn, because the other day Madeline Tosh, somehow there was, I don't know if they put it out or if, I don't know where it came from, but there was a list that had like 115, 114 colors that were being discontinued, and some of them were like super popular. And now that has changed, and those aren't the colors that are being discontinued, but some of them are, and there are still a lot of colors being discontinued. But this has been discontinued for a long time. It's Carnation. And then this one is, I don't remember what it is. It's Floor Rose or Floor something. And Eat Sleep Knit is out of it. So I was just like, what am I going to do? And so this morning I remembered that I have a fade kit from Madeline Tosh. It's directly from Madeline Tosh, and it has all these yarns. And so some of these, I think this one is going to be like perfect. they're perfect enough that if I alternated skeins, it would not show. And so I have all these pinks. So I can definitely do a fade for the bottom. And so I may even just use these in the color work and make it just a totally pink sweater and not have the white or the sugar plum color in there. So I was happy that I found that and that I don't need to order yarn. And then next on my list is the Hohe's pattern, and I like all of Hohe's patterns, but this one is called, well, I don't know because it's not on here. It's either all these lights or all of these lights, and this is what it looks like. And can you see all those cables in there? Now, in my opinion, which my opinion is kind of worthless compared to her opinion because she's an expert and I am not, but I generally do not use speckles like that. If there are cables or a lot of lace work, I will almost always use a solid. And I try not to use a dark solid because sometimes the light just doesn't reflect off of those enough to show the color work. And if I'm going to do all that, I really want it to show. So I've been back and forth. The other day I swatched on a Western Sky Knits Merino 17 is the base worsted weight. The pattern calls for DK weight. And it's a gray and it has just a little bit of a fleck, but I was afraid that the gray was too light and I was afraid the fleck would interfere with the design. And I found that it did. I only knitted like 5 or 6 rows into the cable and then I realized that wasn't what I wanted. Plus, I like a yarn for cables that has a little bit of body to it. You know, it's kind of like this one. This has body. This is not a flimsy yarn. It's not. And the Merino 17 isn't flimsy, but it's a soft yarn, and it's a great yarn, but just for a different purpose. So this is Malabrigo Yerba, and I think I'm going to use this. I got it out this morning, and I was going to go ahead and swatch because this is worsted weight. The pattern calls for DK weight, and my friend took hers to a yarn shop. She lives in Missouri, and she said that she ended up getting Malabrigo Rios, and you've probably heard me say it before, but this is probably my overall favorite yarn today. Tomorrow I'll have another one. But I really do love Rios. Rios is what I use to make the dashi jacket. And it has a hoodie. And I just love this yarn. It's so pretty. Can you see how pretty it knitted up? So I've got that out. And I had the swatch that I had done. I guess now I'm going to talk about swatches. I had the swatch that I had done for that. And down here, and a swatch is simply just knitting. You use basically the same needles that you would use for your project, because if you use a bamboo needle, it's a little more grabby and you might knit a little tighter. And if you use a super pointy, like a Haya lace needle, that's metal, it's going to be less grabby and you're just going to zoom through, and that causes my knitting to be a little loose. And there's not a problem. You just need to know to go down a needle size. If I were doing this swatch, if I redid this swatch and I used a Haya lace pointy needle and I used a size 4 needle, I would probably get the exact same swatch as if I used a size 6 bamboo needle. And so there's nothing wrong with either one. You don't have to, if a pattern calls for a 24 stitch over 4-inch gauge, you do not have to get that gauge using the needle that they suggest. But it is important that you get that gauge or you know how to adjust your pattern. So if a pattern calls for a size 6 gauge, I'm going to to get the gauge, I'm going to start with a size 5. Now on this one, this is the swatch that I actually did before making this sweater. And at the bottom, I used the pattern called for a size 6 needle, and I used a size 5. And can you see that I can actually stretch this to where you can almost kind of see through it a little bit? And then up here, I used a size 4, and I can stretch it to where you can see through it, but it takes a whole lot more stretching than it does down here to get to that point. And so for dashi, I went with the size 5 needle because both of them were close enough to gauge that I wasn't real worried about it. And actually, I was a little bit between sizes there, and I knew I was going to be losing weight. So I went with the size the gauge that I got with the size 5 needle. But for all the lights, I'm going to go with the size 4 needle because I feel like this sweater is going to be heavy. And the tighter the knitted fabric, the less stretch it's going to have. And so I was able to get gauge on this. This one called for a worsted weight, I'm pretty sure. And I was able to get gauge just using a size down, one size smaller needle, which is typical for me. But since all of the lights calls for DK weight, going down 2 needle sizes to a 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter, gives me the fabric that I want to use. Now, there's just not a size 4 needle is 3.5 millimeter. That's a size 4. Did I say size 4? Size 4 US needle is a 3.5 millimeter. A size 5 US needle is a 3.75 millimeter. So there's not a whole lot of difference in those needles, and a lot of times it just really boils down to the fabric that you want to get. So I already had this swatch done, so I didn't have to do that, but I did have to do a cable swatch because the cable gauge is 24 stitches over 4 inches, and the stockinette swatch should be 21.5 stitches over 4 inches. And as you can see on this one, I just ran down a basting thread there, and so it's 4 inches in between, and so I can count my stitches. I mean, I can even pull them apart to make it easier to count. I don't have to let them relax to count them now that I know where my 4-inch mark is. And so this morning I asked Vince, I have the big like 24 by 24, I don't know, play mat, those foamy play mats that you put together for kids. That's what I use for blocking my knitting. And so I asked Vince, I said, do you know where there's like a little piece of styrofoam I could just use to show something on the video this morning? And he said no, he didn't know where there was one. But then whenever I came into the dining room, there was this little package sitting on the table. I thought it had a camera in it, but now I'm not real sure what it has in it. It's not a camera, but I'm not going to take it apart. But anyway, so this is the swatch I made with the cable, the design, to see how that's going to work. So this is the yarn that I plan to use, and I plan to use the 3.5 needles, right? Size 4. And so I've got that all resolved, and Karen and I are going to start doing it together after I get back from Missouri. So we have that. But another thing now to talk about the gauge, which is most new knitters don't start out knitting sweaters, and so you don't realize the importance of gauge, because on a shawl it doesn't matter. It may be, if I'm a super loose knitter, so if the pattern calls for a size 6 needle and I just pick up a size 6 and start knitting, I'm not going to be happy with the fabric because it's going to be very loose. But if I were a new knitter, it just takes a little bit of time to get your sea legs, I guess you could say, to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But if I'm knitting socks, I don't worry about a gauge. I've knitted enough socks that I know that just about any yarn I pick up is going to be okay. And the worst is I might start out and say, oh, this looks too loose, because socks do need to be knitted at a tight gauge because of the wear on the yarn. A looser knitted fabric is going to wear easier and peel more. But there's a bird outside making noise. And I don't do gauges for, mostly not for hats, for shawls, for blankets, for socks, for things that just, don't need to fit. And speaking of fit, this is one of my older shirts, so it's kind of saggy. But today I was just doing a little bit of math on a gauge swatch, and if you have, like this sweater for Addie, this one that I showed, I'm already up to 196 stitches around. And some of those are going to be taken off for the sleeve because we're just doing the yoke that encompasses the shoulders. But 200 stitches is nothing for an adult sweater. And I mean, often you have close to 400 or maybe even more, I don't know. But if you had 200 stitches and you were getting 4 stitches per inch, that would be a pretty big yarn, for sure, worsted weight or higher. Then that is 16 stitches over 4 inches. And so that would equal 200 stitches would equal 50 inches at that gauge. So if you had a sweater you were trying to knit, say this sweater, I'm just going to show you this right here so you kind of get a visual. These are my notes. But say this sweater had a gauge of 24 stitches over 4 inches. So that is 6 stitches per inch. And you want yours to come out to be 33 inches through the chest bust. And that's not my size. But if you need to get 24 stitches over 4 inches, then your gauge would equal a 33.3 inch bust sweater. But say that you're just kind of a little bit sloppy and your gauge is 20 stitches over 4 inches, then it's going to come out to be 40 inches. So if you needed 33 inches, then 40 inches is going to be pretty big. And then it goes on. If you had 6 stitches per inch, that would equal a 50-inch bust. If you had 5 stitches per inch, that would equal a 40-inch bust. If you had 4 stitches per inch, it's your 33 that you're shooting for. And if you had 7 stitches per inch, you're going to get a 28-inch bust. So 1 stitch off per inch over a 200-stitch sweater is going to put you off 7 inches. And 2 stitches off per inch is going to put you off 17 inches. So that is why it's so important to check gauge. And on a piece like this, see, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference as far as the way it looks. But like places like the arms, where my arms are bigger than my chest, sometimes for the sleeves I'll go up a needle size, or I'll just cast on more stitches for the sleeve. But there are all kind of little manipulations that you can do, but you have to know your gauge. And it's your gauge after you knit it, and then you soak it, and then you block it, because these things change. This one's still very wet because I just took it off. But whenever I first put it on here, the cables were just pulling in because they're tight. And so now, by the time this gets dry, these cables are going to they'll just lay flat like the rest of the sweater pretty much. So that's why you have to do your gauge swatch. And they say not only to soak it, but to treat it as you would if it were your garment. So if it's something you're going to machine wash and machine dry, then machine wash and machine dry your swatch. And Suzanne Bryan says to carry it around with you. Put it in your purse, put it in your pocket, put it under your pillow. Just actually abuse it and see how the yarn is going to work out. Now, if you've already bought the yarn, it's not really going to matter. You're going to have to use it. But you would know, I mean, if you're a yarn stasher, you don't want to order enough for 20 sweaters if it's a yarn that you're not going to like how it looks after it's been washed and worn a bit. Or you could just buy Rios and be happy. Okay, so what else was I going to say today? Strange Fruit book. Okay, one last thing. I was going to tell you about if you're just a beginning knitter and you wanted to, I'm having to take my sock off. These are some like little slipper socks that I made last year, and they're called thrums, and they have roving, and that is just fiber. Let me grab some fiber right here because my spinning wheels are right here by me. This is what fiber looks like. In fact, this is Malabrigo fiber. And you just pull little pieces of this off. I'll just pull something off here. You just pull a little piece of fiber off and knit it in with your sock. And these are so warm and so comfy. And this is Cascade 220 yarn that does have to be hand washed. But you can see they kind of wear on the bottom, but the thrums are not there for the looks. They're there to keep your feet warm. And they really do keep your feet warm. See, I got some even coming out. Oh, that's the piece I just put in. But anyway, so if you were wanting to knit socks, this is a really cool pattern because it's the basic sock knitting, but it doesn't have to be fitted. You can see how fat that sock is. That is really fat. And here's a sock for Addie, which is awfully small, but still it has more of a sock shape to it, where this one is just kind of something that's just over your foot. And this Cascade 220 yarn, I like it a lot better than I like the Superwash 220, but I'll have to just wash these by hand, and they'll be fine. But on this, you have the toe, and you have the heel, and you have the cuff, and the heel flap. So it's a great intro to socks, I think. You could even make these way bigger and felt them because Cascade 220 does felt. But I think that is all I wanted to share with you today. So that's your gauge information. And if you've never done it, if you're a new knitter or you're just thinking about knitting, it sounds probably complicated, but it really isn't. It's just one of those things. Just get it out, do it, and you're done, and you'll see that it wasn't hard and that you can do it again. So thank you for watching, and I will see you from Missouri next time.